Hi everybody, welcome back to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel once again. Just want to say thank you to everybody that's already suggested content for 2024. We're looking at that as we speak. Feel free to get in touch with all your suggestions because we do want to hear and we want to bring content that you want to see. But don't worry, review fans, it isn't going to affect the gun reviews. There's still going to be lots and lots of those as this gun in front of me. Following on from the success of the Beretta A303 review, which was really well received, I understand there's quite a lot of people out there, viewers that are classic auto fans. So what we're going to do today, we're going to have a look at another one. This particular gun is really interesting to me because of the history and because of the backstory behind it. And when I thought about doing this, I thought, oh, this will be dead easy to find. It's actually been a much harder proposition to find one that's original than I thought it would be. Lots of guns out there that have been messed about with, shortened, lengthened, etc., which is what I try and avoid when I go and source a gun for one of these reviews. So to put everyone out of their suspense, today we're going to have a look at a Browning B80. Now this follows on really nicely from the Beretta 303 video we did. If you're a fan of autos or if you're a fan of shotguns, make sure you check it out, because these guns are actually very closely related, although I would imagine that very few people know the story. So I am going to tell it you. So the Browning B80 was launched back in 1981. At the time, Browning had got a model called the Browning 2000, which I think Browning had been producing from sort of 76, 77, and it hadn't done particularly well. It had a few issues. It was quite expensive. And in 1981, there was actually a partnership, would you believe, between Browning and Beretta, a loose partnership, something to do with a French company. I don't recall the exact details. So Browning went cap in hand to Beretta and said, we really like the Beretta 302. It's a great piece of kit. Will you sell us the component parts? So some kind of deal was done. And what that meant is that Beretta supplied parts for the 302 direct to Browning. What happened then is Browning had to come up with their own design action. If you look at this, it's got a kind of traditional hog's back Browning shaped action. And the guns were actually assembled in Viana in Portugal, which today is where the Maxus is assembled. So because of that, what you've got is you've got a gas operated semi-auto, which all the parts for the Beretta 302, 303 are completely interchangeable. And because of that, it makes for quite an interesting story. So like I said, at the time, early 1980s, Browning had got the 2000, which I think was a two-shot, which was a little bit of a flop. They really wanted part of the semi-auto market, the gas semi-auto market, which is why they went to Beretta, and the result was the B80. So when I try and source a gun for review, obviously I look at the originality, but I'm also really interested in the kind of dates of manufacture. Can I get a late one? Can I get an early one? Now, I had a bit of a Google, and it turns out that the B80 was only actually manufactured from 1981 to 1988. So this, believe it or not, is a 1992 shotgun. So for all Browning Miracle fans, I would imagine you already know this, but if you've got a Browning and Miracle product since about 1980 with Miracle, and before that with Browning, they've used the letter prefix, which enables you to determine the date of manufacture. There's a mouthful. So NY tells us this is a 1992 shotgun, despite the fact that Browning, I believe, stopped manufacturing this gun, or stopped assembling it, because of course they bought the parts from Beretta in 1988. So that means it's quite a late gun. Now the B80 itself was available with a steel or an alloy action. All 302s and 303s, I believe, are alloy, and this particular gun, having done a magnet test, is also alloy. So it's got an alloy action. It's interesting because when you kind of look at the lines of it, you can kind of see it does look a bit Beretta-esque. If you look historically at Browning semi before this, like an A5, they were much bigger, much chunkier. This is a more, I would say, streamlined look about it. So starting from the top, we have got the receiver, which is plain blue. Like I said, it's got this hog's back kind of shape to it. And what Beretta actually did, I believe, is they looked at what Browning had done with their bits and said, oh, we like that. And then subsequently, the model that superseded the 303, which was the Beretta 304, and then 390, took on this kind of hog's back appearance as well. So it was almost kind of copied from the B80, which although they had a hand in, they didn't manufacture. So this one here is 28-inch, 2 3/4 inch chambers. There were Magnum versions available, I mean, let's not forget here, the biggest consumer of semi-autos is the States, like I've said before, and the majority of these guns did actually end up there. So this one is a 28-inch, 2 3/4 chamber, narrow rib, 6mm. But like I said, you take it apart and you can see it is exactly the same as the 303. It's got the same piston assembly, no piston cup jokes today, okay? Same magazine tube, and it's just exactly the same. If we had any doubt, if you look on the barrels, it's actually got PB for Pietro Beretta, patent Italy, and there's a patent number on it. Above there, it says special steel, 12-gauge shells, 2 3/4 chambers, and of course, it was Invector. Now, a lot of these B80s were actually fixed choke models. This one being a later one has got the Invector multi-choke system, which obviously Browning are famous for. I would imagine that started in about 1985, 86, which is when Browning started incorporating it into their over and unders shotgun range. So 6mm rib, Invector chokes, short chokes like these. Like I say, if you've not seen one before, there's billions out there. There's all sorts of Brownings that use them, 325s, 425s, B80s, Citoris, all that kind of stuff. Very famous choke system, which ultimately means it's nominal board. This particular gun is board at 18.4, nominal board. And it's also actually got 92 stamped on there, which denotes the year of manufacture, which I haven't seen before. Having said that, it's the first time I've probably had a real look at a Browning B80 close up. Back to the action. Like I said, it just looks, it's all Beretta. You've got your release button there. You've got your bolt hold open. If you look at the underside, it's got the same carrier as a flipping 302, 303, same trigger guard. It is essentially a Beretta. And that's why a lot of people actually consider this to be the best Browning semi-auto ever made, because it is basically a Beretta and they make some flipping good gas autos. So just pull the bolt back. Now this particular example, like I said, it was really difficult to find one of these. It was all original. They have been well used, well loved, a little bit like a 303, but I think ultimately there was probably more 303s sold in this country than there were B80s, because this is not a gun you tend to see that often. Not done a huge amount of work because you've got the ejection port here still retaining a large amount of its original blue colour, so that it's not been absolutely hammered. Like I said, this one's an alloy action gun and it weighs 7 pounds 5 ounces, which is about what you'd expect for a gas semi-auto. Obviously, inertia ones tend to be lighter weight, like Benelli's, because there's less gubbins, there's less internals, because you've just got essentially the inertia spring in the stock. So we've established that the mechanics are 100% Beretta, parts supplied to Browning under some kind of license, and they were assembled in the Browning factory in Viana in Portugal. The woodwork on this gun interests me because I really don't know what the situation is, whether Browning produced their own stocks or whether Beretta manufactured them and sent them over. I mean, you could argue that Browning had to do something, and they were already producing stocks for their other semi-auto guns at the time, like the 2000. So this one, very different to a 303, as with a lot of American specification semi-autos and shotguns in general. They have an awful lot of drop on the stock. You know, you can see just looking at the line there, that's very, very low in the comb. However, it does incorporate the same shim system as a Beretta 302, 303. It will fit. It's exactly the same in terms of that. With a 303, and I got to make the comparison on the 302 because it's essentially the same gun. All 302s had a plastic butt plate. Some 303s, as we've seen in the previous video, like the Sporter, had a rubber butt pad. I've never seen a B80 with anything other than, you know, this plastic Bakelite butt plate, which I'm a huge fan of. It digs into you all the time from the bottom of the toe. Now, foreend's slightly different because I think with the 302, it actually it was captive, it went on the forend and then went over the magazine tube, whereas this one is completely removable. I can't be 100% certain, but I think that forend is much, much longer than a 303 forend. Feels similar. You've got this kind of beaver tail-esque thing. You've got the double point checkering going on, which again is different to the Beretta. So there are subtle little differences, but ultimately the heritage of the thing lies in the fact that all the mechanics of it are Beretta, and that's why it works so well, because it's a gas-operated semi-auto, and Beretta make one of the best, there's no question. So the woodwork is what you would expect from an American specification gun. It's got a lacquered stock, and it almost takes on this kind of maple look. Now, I've seen a lot of American spec guns, particularly from Browning, that actually boast that they use this kind of maple wood and give you this kind of puce yellowy colour. Am I a fan of it? Not particular, but obviously it's got a following because they manufacture it and they sell it in the States. So that kind of wraps up the B80. Very different. Like I said, if you're a fan of classic semi-autos, this is something that you will be aware of, you will have come across, particularly if you're a Browning fan. You know, prior to this, you got the 2000, which is a gun we may look at on the channel, but it wasn't hugely popular, which, you know, like I said at the start of the video, is why Browning went to Beretta, because they wanted a piece of the action. I would imagine in this day and age, if Browning went to Beretta to try and do a deal, the answer would be absolutely no way, go away, we're doing what we do and that's the end of it, and we're not helping you. Back then things were a bit different. Like I said, there was some kind of partnership going on, and they were therefore able to do a deal with Beretta, and they manufactured these for 7 or 8 years. Like I said, lots and lots and lots of them. They obviously did quite well out of the job, and consequently, which I find, you know, almost comical, is that Beretta then produced a gun with a hog's back action in order to emulate the Browning. Also, which is not unusual for a gun, again, that was solely or mainly aimed at the American market, is these were available in smaller calibers. Quite a few 20 bores were manufactured because, of course, as a lot of like the American counterparts will tell us, they do a lot of hunting over there with semi-autos, where, of course, in the UK, apart from pigeon shooting and apart from wildfowling, it's something that you just can't do on a driven game shoot. So yeah, quite a few 20 bores out there. I don't know of any other smaller calibers like 28, but I suppose that would again come down to the fact that the 302 was available in a 20 bore, which is what this gun essentially is, but it was never available in anything else, i.e. 28, 410, etc. So that in essence is the Browning B80. If you've got anything you want to say, please comment below. Please send us any questions about the gun or any other kind of Browning auto. Don't forget to check out the website. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And just remember that we don't always review pristine examples that have come out of cardboard boxes. Thanks for watching. See you soon.